Hello everybody, the Lord Root here, and welcome back to another episode of Back to Basics. So, today I thought we would deal with some contracts that we have, and I made an interesting discovery. More about that whenever we get to the proper place. But, for now, let's go ahead and make this happen. I'm going to take Tedsy, our novice pilot, and I'm going to get us some science. What kind of science, may you ask? Well, I'm going to get us the science that I thought that was inaccessible to us at this level of technology. Let me just let this guy stabilize. Throttles to full. And we're going to go ahead and take Jebediah's greatness. Now here we need to actually get fairly high up. We need to, if we look at the data here, we need to get above, let's see, where is that? That's somewhere around here. I think it's 1850. It's a very high deal, but we can do that. 1870, or 18700. Let's go ahead and get this guy going. And let's get straight to business. You can see we have our maneuver marker way down here, and this is a fairly difficult contract to get, just because of the fact that it's so high up. But we can be heading directly to it. Let me just get rid of our landing gear here. The goal will be for us to get get a couple of contracts out of the way. Get a little bit of science. Maybe get our landing gear. Now, depending on what contracts come up, I am going to take this guy and we'll do a couple of things here. So far, I think this aircraft, even though I've designed another that we will use in the future, this aircraft is actually the most nimble to my way of thinking. And the plan is for us to get up to altitude and to pull up as soon as we get close. We are quite a way out. This is going to be a long mission, so I will probably do time acceleration at some point here. These missions, as it turns out, are amongst the more difficult ones. And that is simply due to the fact that we have to get up to the higher altitude, and then we have to stop whatever it is we're doing. And get as close as we can. Determining how close that is can be a little difficult. But if we take a shallow approach, at least for the moment, we will conserve fuel and we'll have engine power. Or not fuel, but intake air, because that's the trick here. We have to be able to gather from our intake here. And that is important to us. Now I've decided when we get finished with this, and we could actually do this now, but I'm going to unlock the astronaut complex. For the reason that we have a rescue mission coming up. Now, as it turns out, that rescue mission right now would be quite difficult because of the fact that we can't target anything. And that is a bit of a problem. However, once we get close, I'm just going to pull this guy up here. Once we get close, we should be okay. So, yeah, I guess I will just, for now, time warp in the video. Maybe physically, too. Physical time warp wouldn't be a bad thing to have. We can maintain stability this way. And I will see you when we gather the last of our science that we need to. Okay, so we are now in flight here, and what we are doing is we are trying to reach this high altitude point. So, Jebediah's greatness is not too terribly hard to reach with this guy. This plane is a little bit more oomph. It just takes a long time, and in fact, this entire part of the video took some time. It was something to the order of, I don't know, about 40 minutes or so of real game time. I've taken the liberty of speeding up half of this to 4 times its time acceleration. But I have also, near the latter part, sped it up to 16 times, and you will see why here in a bit. But we are now heading towards our next waypoint, and that is coming up fairly soon. At least, soon enough for us to be able to do something about it. And you will see as we come up close to it that I actually do get clipped by Neto's obsession, which I later decide to loop around and get. I guess I jumped the gun a bit, it looks like. But, yeah, we're heading towards the other goal. And here's where we run into Neto's obsession, or close to it. And we're just too low for us to be able to hit it, so I've got to loop around and get it once, I finish up with it. There it was right there. Now, at first I thought that I'd missed my waypoint. I was a little bit confused by the fact that the navball was telling me to keep going in the direction I was going. And then I realized Neto's obsession was not where I was heading. And so, what I ended up doing here was I ended up pulling up as hard as I could in order to fetch that waypoint there. This has turned out to be quite lucrative in terms of our science, as we are now getting pretty close. And now we're just going in for that one landing zone. And I managed to spin out of control at this point, partially because I turned a little bit too rapidly, but our engines can handle it. And at this point, we are just going in for a landing. Now, I've figured out that the best way for us to approach this is to wait for this guy to get about to the -45 degree mark. These guys are pretty difficult to hit because they have such a small radius. So we have to go through and do our landing as a result. And then we'll have to go walk over there. There's actually two of these guys here that we want to hit. And you can see that marker's falling down very slowly, so the plan is to cut engines when we get close and deploy parachutes. And unfortunately, I'd moved out of the area. But that's not that big of an issue. All we have to do is get out. I'm doing a little bit of science here. And then when I recover that vessel, we're going to be able to get the science out of it. But we are now walking to the proper place, so this is the point where we kick up the time acceleration to 16 times, and you can see why. This is by far the longest part of the mission. And there's something interesting to note about this. You'll note that although we have a science limit of 100 in our research facility, we can still gather science above that, which is quite nifty. That means that although we don't have applications, we can save that science up for us to spend. So here we are doing our thing here, and we should be getting pretty close to the site here. Definitely this is the longer part of the mission because it took close to, oh, I don't know, 30 or so minutes, even at 4 times time acceleration. But we'll be, after some wandering around, this part is so long because of the slow speed of the Kerbal and also the fact that I'm constantly checking the map. But we're about to be at this point to where we can recover the vessel, and I will just wait until then. Okay, we are back. Just briefly, anyhow, the house is about to shut down, so I'm probably going to resume part of this tomorrow. But I just wanted to see what kind of contracts we had going for us. Maybe spend some of the science. We do have more than enough here. Radial decoupler and flight. That's okay. We need money more than anything. Let's see. These are all surface deals here. And this is something that could be better. If we can get something worth a lot of money, that would be good. Siglo's Tract looks like it could be interesting. Where is Siglo's Tract? By the way, we can upgrade this, and I'm beginning to think maybe that's not a bad idea. However, I don't know if we have anything in range of that. And these are sort of out of the way. So that leaves these guys here. I'm going to have to arrange to somehow send a plane into orbit so that we can get into the appropriate spot for these. I mean, I believe we have, once we can do that, we would have enough fuel. But, yeah, let's look at our upgrades real quick. I think definitely we can start thinking about our science here. And one of the things I want to get before anything else is I want to get landing gear. I also think I'm going to get these probe parts here in RCS. That's very important to us because that means if we unlock this guy here, I think we... Oh, we can't quite upgrade that yet. However, we do have this visual surveys that we gotta do. That'll give us 30k. Then we could put something in orbit as well. And then, of course, we have scientific data from around the moon as well. So I've somehow got to construct a lander that will get us out there. But I will probably return in a couple of seconds for y'all. It'll probably be tomorrow for me, and I will see you here in a bit. And we are back. So we actually have the opportunity to fulfill a couple of contracts here. I just thought real quick that before we did that, I would take one final stab at getting the remainder of some of these contracts. We can now use the Mr. Mouth plane, which I will explain later, but given the fact that we're trying to save money, I think we will utilize the jump jet for the time being, except, of course, I forgot to put in the one thing we need for this, which would be, of course, a pilot that could fly it. However, before too long, I think, let me just get rid of this guy here. We'll put, Tedsy went last time. How about Newfurt? We'll put Newfurt in charge here. And these guys will eventually go to space. But for the time being, we will send these guys out here and simply head towards this guy here, Sector IST-IQ, which I believe is going to be northwest. Maybe somewhere around here. And I'm hoping it will not take too long for us to get out there. And we'll keep ourselves at about maybe 10,000 feet or so. But yeah, this will free up another contract for us, which will be great, because we are almost at the point to where, while I don't think I will be rescuing the Kerbal just yet, because I don't think there's going to be room, on the other hand, I believe it would be great for us to get this guy taken out of the way so that we might be able to get some other kind of science there. Be very good for us if we did. So let's get on up to 10k or so. I'm gonna get up there as quickly as I can. Although I guess actually 5k would be better. We want to sort of straddle the line between getting high enough to where we go quickly, or as quickly as possible, and low enough so that we're able to go nose up as soon as we need to. So that'll be the plan. We are still quite a little while away from this, and in fact I'm going to zoom in here just so that we have some idea when we're going to get close. I guess it suggests going this way because of our orbital velocity. And let's start leveling off. We don't really need to be going much higher than this, but we do want to get there as quickly as possible. And the reason for this is just because of the fact that we're not going to be able to get back in this thing once we land. So it'll be very important that we take care of this. Now, as for the rest of the science, I'm hoping that we will do an okay job here and get our science on another mission, which will be our moon landing mission. Yes, with the upgrade that we have, it'll actually be quite possible for us to hit the moon. And I've designed a rocket that will help us in that respect. For now, we have just got, I'll put it on time acceleration so that we get closer to this thing. This is remarkably stable given how close we are to not really moving that quickly at all. I think as long as we get close in, it'll be fine. Probably the time for us to begin our pitch program will be coming up pretty soon. I think I'm going to start pitching up now. And this will give us a chance to get above the required height. There we go. I believe we can take this crew report now. And let's just target GPR in QJ, or whatever it is. But we do have to be careful here. We're not doing well in terms of control. And this thing does not really glide all that well. We're even getting a little bit of re-entry heating here. Okay. Let's try this. Let's just get ourselves out of this climb. or out of this fall rather. And I think we will maintain level flight until we get close. And we do want to get fairly close. I'm going to, once I get this turn completed, I'm just going to get right on this 180 mark. I believe we will have to cut engines fairly soon. So, shut down engine, deploy parachutes. Let's slow down as much as we can and maybe even turn around just a little bit. I have an idea of where we need to go for this, but we still have plenty of time to get down to our proper heading here. And I believe that will do it. Let's land here. Maybe a new biome for us. I think we were pretty close to the mountains. Let's see if it is, in fact, a new biome. Still highlands. And we have a bit of an issue here because I do not believe we can... Oh. We can, in fact, get... Wait, did we just... That was completely unexpected. Wow. Maybe I should have taken the other jet there. Well, I'll tell you what. Given that this has just happened, I'm going to do two things. I'm going to grab these parts here, because they will... Oh, well, maybe I won't. Oh, that's not the proper deal. I want the astronaut complex. Although I'm beginning to think maybe we should at least recover that. I will get that last bit of science quickly, and I will see you here in a bit. Well, you know, actually, I just thought about something. This is the perfect time for us to test our new plane. So I will show you Mr. Mouth, and I will show you... Oh, we need to unlock a couple of things. Let's do that. The gear bay is one. So we will unlock this gear bay. And then structural wing A. I think that'll do it for that. Let's try this once again. And hopefully Tedsy will be alright. Now this guy is a proper plane. But I call it Mr. Mouth just because of the placement of the intake. It looks a little bit like a mouth to me. We'll also have some science we can do there as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to activate navigation and fly straight to it. And you will get to see that after takeoff. But I did want you to see takeoff first, because the one thing about this runway is that it's uneven. Fortunately, we have the ability to take off fairly easily in this plane. So let's just turn over to this one spot here. And I think we shall see you here in a bit. So we're getting close here. At least close enough for us to consider slowing down. And the good thing about this is that we could probably land this guy to where we can just taxi on over to where we want to go to. There we go. So it's a bit like driving a car in a way. We do have to be careful here. And I'm going to very slowly, I'm going to use our engine to help us move around. And we will just apply the brakes here. Let's go ahead and grab us some materials, bay, science. And additionally, it wouldn't be bad to get a mystery goo or two. In fact, we might as well get both of them, because we have 2 pods here. Now, the cool thing about this is that we can get this plane to kneel, and we can just simply take our EVA report and get up to the cockpit here. And if we wanted to, we could even take off again. I'm just going to recover the vessel. There's no real reason to worry about flying back. But that is very useful for us, and we actually have some things we can do with that. Let me just check our contracts here. One thing for sure I want to get rid of is this guy. It's not all that useful to us, and it might open up some new contracts. But we're going to go ahead and, for the visual surveys, we are just going to do that. We're going to upgrade this guy and leave the visual surveys alone for now. And we're going to build a little test rig. Now this guy is going to be very interesting because, well, first of all, we want to unlock this. And place down our probe here. But in addition to that, we want to do other things as well. We want to give this guy an engine in which we can maintain control, and you know what? We're going straight up. We'll use the higher thrust engine for that, but we also want, in addition to that, these little ant engines. They call them LV1s now, but in my mind they're still the ant. And then on top of that, we'll throw down this Mark III parachute, or Mark II-5 parachute. We'll want some batteries. Not all that many though. And we'll want some parachutes to go along with that. Now these guys I'm going to have deploy, I don't know, a .15, and this guy will deploy at a pressure of 0.1. And the reason we're having to do that is largely because of the fact that if we don't do it this way, then this will slow down our progress. We're trying to kill two birds with one stone. Let's just put on these landing legs, and this should be good enough for us. We might want to offset those just a little bit so that they have clearance, and we'll tuck them into here as if they were part of the engine. Other than that, I think it's time for us to lock the suspension. We'll leave them down for now. There's no reason. Well, this thing can bounce on its engine, though. So, we've got two tasks here. We have to be able to get into a suborbital trajectory using this LV1 liquid engine. That's not going to be too hard with the amount of fuel we put on there, but we also have to get to 18,800 meters as well. So we'll just take care of that really quickly. Minimum pressure is 0.1. I think that's what I set it to. All that really matters about this, well, I say all that really matters. It would appear as though that gimbling engine really is necessary. That's okay though, we're so close to the KSC, and for that matter the launch pad, that I think it'll be okay. We are a little heavy though, and that is a bit of a problem. Well, we'll burn a little bit to slow us down, and hopefully we won't lose too much because of that. Let's try this again with the gimbling engine. If it in fact saved my design. And I believe it has. A gimbling engine will set us straight. And there we go. Let's give this another shot. Now, the reason I'm using the more advanced probe core is because unlike the Stay Putnik, that probe core, well, This is not going well, is it? It's not going well at all. That probe core can essentially kill, it can act as a level 0 pilot, which is what we want. A level 0 pilot in this case is exactly what's needed to keep us stable. So here we go. Thrust to maximum. And the name of the game is getting out of the atmosphere as quickly as possible, while not going too terribly fast, because we do have a lower bound here that we have to respect. And of course we also have drag to deal with as well. That makes this a little bit trickier, but we should have more than enough fuel for us to be able to complete this. So, yeah, the main question is, are we going to exceed this critical limit? That will make it a whole lot more difficult for us to maintain our altitude. Well, I'm going to wait for this arrow to turn green, and it's time to throttle up, as we've now completed that contract and got a whopping 43 science out of it, which I must say is not that bad. It's not bad at all. Now we just have to get ourselves as far out of the atmosphere as we will be allowed to. And at this time, hit our suborbital trajectory that we will be needing to get. So that will be coming up pretty soon. Okay. Run test quickly. Run test. There we go. We're good for landing. Well, almost. It might be best for us to get our landing gear out first. We'll descend somewhere near KSC, probably. And that is more than worth it from my perspective, because we now have 67 compared to the 40 we have. Plus we have tons of science. We have 144, which, we could really use. And that actually does leave a little window of opportunity open to us. Because originally what I was going to do with our probe was I was just going to put a whole bunch of batteries on it. And then have it go on its way. But actually it makes sense now because of the amount of research that we have to do two things. First of all, that's not where I wanted to go. First of all, what I want to do is I want to go here, and there's really nothing new here. These are, I've seen better. Visual surveys are probably well worth it. But these guys are way out of the way, so I'm not going to do that. However, that means that we can go here now. Let's see what we've researched already in this top tier. We have already gotten the landing legs, which is great. Or not the landing legs, but the advanced jets. I think it would be best if we looked at electrics, because we are sending this thing to the moon. And as for general construction, that could become useful in the future. We don't quite need it yet, but it's something for us to think about. I mean, I think the next target is probably going to be this, because that will unlock a ton of science for us, and we want that amount of science unlocked. However, at this stage in the game, I'm actually going to be looking at something completely different, so I will be right back as I make some of my corrections, and we will see you then. And we're back, just briefly. I just noticed two interesting contracts popped up here. And in fact, I will go ahead and do the launch after this, but they are to put satellites into a specific orbit, which I believe we can do. Now, this may not have much of a thing here. We may want RCS for this, because there may be some difficulty, but we'll take them because they are worth a fair amount of money, and also probably science as well. I hadn't really looked at the science. We get 7 science out of that, and we get 7 out of this, for a total of about 100k. Well, let's go ahead and launch our Lunar probe here, because that is one of the more important things. And to be honest, I want to take care of that as quickly as possible, just because of that. So we will go ahead and perform our launch now. And this should be quite handy for us. Got the SRBs on there to save a little bit of fuel. And, you know, while we're at it, we'll bring up the nav ball. And these are those 2 orbits that we have here. That is actually rather nice that they'll put them on there for you. But I will probably take care of that in the next episode. And so my plan is to do my pitch program at about 9k or so. And for us to begin our orbital insertion pretty quickly. We'll jettison those boosters there. And we will move on ahead. I'm going to target the moon so that on the way up we can measure our nodes here. And I think fine control will be a dandy thing for us to have. Now we could still get to the moon regardless of whether or not we do this perfectly. But yeah, we're just maintaining our time to apoapsis here at about a minute or so. And we'll even pull this guy down just a little bit. How are we doing on fuel here? We still have a fair amount of fuel, as it turns out. But we were about to stage. Oh, where are we at right now? We're at 48. We're doing okay, I think. Just raise that apsis just a little bit. However, we're way off. That may not be as much of a problem, though, as you might imagine it to be. It will just mean that we will have to do a little bit of a correction later on. And I believe that we will be in space soon. So it's time for us to circularize this orbit. That's a 5-second burn. With almost a full tank of fuel. Let's just get ourselves into position here. And it doesn't really matter how inclined we are at this point, because our inclination is not so great that we won't hit the moon. "85 by 86. Let's give it a little bit more. There we go. Now here's a question. Do we have to do a correction maneuver If we do, then that maneuver is probably better done out here. $855, that's definitely doable for us. And in terms of our resources, we are doing just fine. We are lagging a bit, but we are doing fine nonetheless. That's about a minute burn. Now, I will not be retrieving this from the moon, unfortunately. I think parachutes would have been a little too heavy. However, when we get about to 30 seconds or so, or even 28, I think would be good, we will perform this burn out to the moon and get ourselves close in. And we'll be performing experiments in both high orbit and low orbit. So there we go. We currently have our periapsis. I'm not going to bother with an inclination change here. I'm just going to take us straight out. However, well, I was going to suggest that we orient ourselves to the sun. But Kerbin seems to have eclipsed us. And we are picking up our solar power here. So we don't really need to worry about that. I'm going to disable one of these batteries as a backup, in case we really happen to need it. And we are now in the moon's sphere of influence, which means it's time for us to do an experiment. We'll get 30% of the goo data out. And that'll be okay. We'll be able to do more in the way of goo when we get close to here. But for now, I think it is best that we simply bring our orbit down. It's about 270 meters per second or so. And you know what, we'll bring it down to 18K. Or will we? Yeah, we bring it down here, I think we'll be okay. maybe even a little bit lower. We want to land on the light side of the moon. And we will just get ourselves into position for this landing. I'm going to bring out the gear as well. There's no reason not to have the gear out. We got our first deal going on here. That's a 16-second burn. So I think it's important that we burn around 8 seconds or so in order to make that burn happen. And what is our apoapsis height? We'll go for 11. There we go. We are more or less in orbit. I'm going to shoot for the Midlands, I think. And that comes in about 30 minutes or so. Plenty of time for us, to be sure. And here comes the sign. Though, I think we would be better served if we just burned now. As I had gotten our rotation incorrect. That should get us on the Midlands. I'm going to kill some of our lateral, in fact all of our lateral velocity. So landing here should not be much of an issue. However, I should take care not to crash into the surface. And so that's what we're going to focus on now. There's a lot of redundancy here in terms of our fuel. I wasn't expecting our fuel to last nearly as well as it has. I think a little bit of time acceleration is in order here. And we are getting pretty close to the surface, so I'm gonna start to cut that out. Let's just accelerate a little bit until we can at least see our shadow. And there we go. It doesn't really matter that we've tipped over, because we have completed our mission. And so we will transmit this data, and once it is received, you will notice now that we have completely completed this contract. And that gives us quite a bit of flexibility. So, that leaves us with a number of options available. I believe one of the things I'm going to do first is unlock this new experiment that we have. Probably the next thing to get is this guy, maybe fuel lines, and then finally heavy rocketry. And that'll keep us going at least for a little bit. However, we also have another upgrade that will be very important to us, where we can get 12 Kerbals here. And we really do want another pilot as well. Maybe a backup scientist wouldn't be bad to have as well. Unfortunately, they're all quite stupid. So we'll grab another scientist and another engineer, and that leaves us room for 5 more Kerbals. But we'll leave it at that for now. And until then, this has been the Lord Root, and I will see